It's time to have The Real Convo, a show that brings hope and awareness to those affected by suicide and mental health. As someone who is affected by both, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention Southeast Florida board member Alan Mednick breaks the stigma with his mission that no one ever feels alone. With the help of influential guests in the community, The Real Convo starts now.
Welcome to Real Convo. This is Alan Mednick, board member with the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and we have a great show here today. We're going to be talking about, which I guess most people have, it might be sometimes overdiagnosed, but we are going to be talking about ADD and ADHD today. First of all, I want to thank our sponsors for allowing us to do this show, Clarity Health Solutions and Business Services for You. Again, we have our guest today, co-host, is Jennifer Hoskin-Tomko from Clarity Health Solutions.
Hi, Alan.
Hey, how you doing today?
Good, you?
Okay, well, I'm glad you're here today to help me with this. And our special guest today is Brooke Schnittman. Is that correct?
It is correct.
Okay. That's my biggest challenge on this show, to get the names correct.
Well, when you have a last name like mine, it's not that easy.
So, Brooke is from Coaching with Brooke. And you specialize in working with people with ADD and ADHD.
Sure. So ADHD is the umbrella term. So I work with individuals who have ADHD combined, inattentive, or hyperactive.
Okay. How did you get started in this?
Sure. So I specialized in special education, got my master's degree from NYU in 2006. So I've been working with individuals with ADHD since 2006. Worked my way up in the school system and decided that I wanted to work more hands-on. So I moved to Florida and started my own coaching business, and now work with all ages and parents of kids with ADHD.
Wow, it's a topic I was mentioning to you before. When I was younger, 40 years ago, when I was in school, I was diagnosed with reading comprehension. And it was basically when I would read a book, I would read the line, and I didn't know what I read. Sure. I would have to go back and read it 2 or 3 times. Right. My mind was racing, but they didn't. I guess they didn't know what ADD or ADHD was back then.
There wasn't a lot of education as much as there is now, and I know a lot of adults that I work with were misdiagnosed, especially in women, because a lot of women have the inattentive type. So as far as a learning disability like you have, the reading comprehension, which was a little bit slower, that is sometimes looked at first, or a processing disorder before ADHD.
Okay. And then obviously going into the 80s, my brother, who's much younger than me, and even my nephew were both diagnosed with it, given Ritalin right away.
Right.
So back then, I guess Ritalin was the choice of drugs back then.
Ritalin and Adderall are the oldest stimulant medications.
Okay. Just as far as that goes, how would you diagnose somebody with these? I mean, is it just what are the symptoms? Yeah.
Sure. So since I'm a coach, I can't diagnose anyone, but I can be aware of the symptoms. So there's 9 symptoms in each different ADHD category. So something to look for is someone who may daydream, for the inattentive type especially, someone who could fidget, someone who, especially in the school setting, who is expected to remain seated and they're up and out of their seat all the time. Organizationally, they are disorganized at home, in school. Their backpack is a mess. They aren't, they have clothes, like piles and piles of clothes on the floor. They can be forgetful. Their working memory is slow, so you may tell them things and they forget. Also, if you give them multi-step directions, sometimes they can remember the first and the last thing, but not everything in between. So there's a lot to look for.
Yeah, and it looks like, obviously, there's a high percentage of people that have this condition.
Sure.
And it is a mental health issue. I see here it's almost 10% of children between the ages of 4 and 17 have ADHD. Sure. Almost 5% of adults between the ages of 18 and 44.
Yes.
So it's more prevalent in children.
Well, it's more diagnosed in children because in school, the first people who would see something would be the teachers. because you're supposed to adapt to an environment, and especially in boys who are more diagnosed than girls, because often they're the ones with the hyperactivity. That's when they're diagnosed. As an adult, a lot of adults have compensated or hidden their symptoms.
Yes.
And so they're not as prevalent to be diagnosed. But believe it or not, I am working with a lot of adults, including myself, who just got diagnosed. So because the education is out there, now more and more adults are recognizing their symptoms.
And again, I don't know if it's as much as hidden as, again, in my situation, I wasn't aware of it all those years.
Sure.
I didn't know what it was, basically. And then you just, as a human, you compensate.
Yeah.
And you learn how to survive.
Exactly.
So that's what I did all the years. But knowing what it is now and how to work with it, it does become easier, because I know there were many times where I became frustrated.
Sure.
And there is a co-occurring, I guess you said two-thirds?
Comorbid, sure. So there's that iceberg. So all you see outside is the diagnosis of ADHD, but under the iceberg, 2/3 of people have different coexisting conditions like OCD, ODD, anxiety, depression, learning disabilities, processing disorders, bipolar, tic syndrome. So there's a lot.
Tourette's, I saw was on there too.
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, one of the what I was talking to you about before, what I believe in is that the ADHD and ADD could actually increase the symptoms for these other, like anxiety, for an instant.
So a lot of
no, what I was going to say, when you have ADD, the focus part of it is a very tough thing to get past.
Right.
When you're overcome by many tasks and you're trying to get something done, but you see everything in front of you. And I know sometimes with me, I'll be trying to, accomplish one task, and my mind will be thinking about another task. I won't finish that task to jump to the other one. And it becomes very frustrating, and my anxiety levels increase because of that.
Yeah. So a lot of people think that it's just anxiety at first, right? So that I'm sure in your field also, people are treated for anxiety and depression.
Yeah, huge overlap with ADD, ADHD, and the misdiagnosis. So I love that you just said that, because I think it's essential. But ultimately, the skill set probably is very similar as well, as far as being able to manage those symptoms.
Right. For sure. So a lot of the symptoms overlap, for anxiety, depression, ADHD. But yeah, it's sometimes treated just as anxiety, but really the anxiety is created from the ADHD or comorbid with that. And more mental health professionals are now starting to specialize in ADHD so they can understand what's behind that. But yes, you can get anxious, and anxiety, and you're the specialist here, is thinking about the future and being worried about the future. Now, if you have a plan for your day, for your week, for your month, the anxiety can be lessened. So what I work on with my clients is strategies to keep them organized.
And that's absolutely what I want to get into, because this is where the topic really becomes important for me, because we have, and I'm going to bring both of you in on this, Jen.
Sure.
I want your professional opinion as a psychotherapist and working with psychiatrists, and Brooke, your coaching. When you're talking about medication, I believe that medication is needed in most instances, but a lot of times it's overdiagnosed, overprescribed rather.
Okay.
And every time, like I talk about my son a lot with his anxiety and depression, and it just happened last week. Every time you go in, the doctor wants to find an excuse to raise his medication.
Okay. Every
single time. And I believe that medication is needed for certain things, but there are other ways to cope with what you have outside of medication.
Sure.
So, Jen, we spoke about this. I take Adderall, and I'm having a tough time getting it. No one has it right now. So what do you look at for medication? How do you think medication plays into this, and where you should look to other means.
Well, I can certainly use actually my own personal example with my son. I have a 12-year-old, but about maybe around 9, the teacher did come to me and she said, hey, I'm a little concerned about his attention. He's no problem. He's like totally a kid that would fly under the radar.
Right.
So we ended up having him assessed, and we had to get 3 assessments, one from the parents, one from the teacher, and one from himself, I believe.
Yeah.
And that was how they determined whether or not he was eligible for medication. I really did not want him on medication. I thought that, he's 9 years old. I'm not going to do that. So we waited a while and we tried to use all these different strategies to help him. But then we started noticing, that wasn't really working the way we needed it to. And then also, it was starting to affect his self-esteem.
Absolutely.
He was feeling less than. He was starting to, I'm stupid, I can't do it, and everybody's going to know. And his negative self-talk to me was more damaging
Absolutely.
to his mental wellness than me putting him on medication long enough for him to learn those skills. And then we could look at not having the medication anymore.
So that's an interesting point. You just mentioned long enough to learn the skills. So you're not planning on having somebody be on medication forever if you have ADD, or is it
That is a personal decision. I can't say yes or no for that. But what I can say in combination to Jennifer is that I do believe that when you are diagnosed with ADHD, you should try the behavioral strategies because these are lifelong, right? Medication is only when it's in your system. So it stops working once it's out of your system.
And Adderall works pretty quickly. It's not like a depression or anxiety medication where it takes weeks to get into your system.
Right.
It works like pretty much immediately when you take it that day.
Right. But, so it's either in your system or it's not in your system. And so often people come to me and they're saying, oh, I don't want to put my kids on medication, exactly what you went through. And I totally understand it's the parent's perspective of how they want their child to be raised. But I like what you said about how your son started developing these anxieties and these negative thoughts, because what Dr. Russell Barclay says, and he's like the guru of ADHD, and Russ Green and Dr. Thomas Brown, they believe in medication because the alternative of not being on medication is anxiety, depression, the social anxiety, and all of these life expectancies actually that go down if it's not treated correctly.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about how it, if you know the knowledge of how it works in the brain, what does ADD do? And, what are other ways you could cope with it and deal with it besides medication?
Yeah. So first I'll talk about the medication. So there's these synapses in the brain, and the medication like Adderall, Ritalin, these stimulant medications, they control the neurons in the brain and they send messages so they can connect the synapses. So the synapses is this gap in between two connectors. So think of, an electric, a plug, right? Yes. So it's like that. And then when you use medication, it can control the norepinephrine in the brain, the dopamine in the brain, and it could actually slow down the usage of it because you only have a certain amount all the time.
Okay. And that's what's happening with the brain. It's actually it's running faster than you could process things.
Right. So basically, if you think about someone with ADHD who's not on medication, they get really excited. They work on interest and motivation and things that they like, right? So they can use a lot of dopamine or epinephrine. Their brain is activated when they're interested, but not as activated when they're not as interested. So this kind of controls things. So it can make someone less impulsive, can kind of clear the noise in the brain a little bit. But you had mentioned it doesn't work for everyone, and that's correct. So stimulant medications are supposedly the best medication for the best effect. And then you can try non-stimulant medication if that doesn't work. But yeah, you have to speak to a doctor about that. And then 10 to 20% of people, medication just doesn't work for them. Their brain doesn't accept it.
Okay. And I do want to point out too, there are a lot of problems with getting medication because of the addictive nature.
Yeah.
And there's a reluctance on the parents' part because of having an addictive nature as well. But I do want to make sure that we indicate that there are non-addictive stimulants that exist. So
Absolutely.
if you have some concerns about that, there are options.
Yeah.
Well, the ironic part about it is, everybody says what like Adderall will do for you. It gets you, it's almost like a high, I guess they say sometimes. People are talking about that. They say it's one of the side effects is you lose weight, all this other stuff. None of it I feel. So I
didn't lose weight. I guess I didn't get that benefit.
Then you actually really need it, and that's the thing that they talk about.
So, they compare it to, because do you drink coffee?
Yes.
Right. So I used to drink a lot of coffee before I started Adderall. A lot.
10 minutes.
I would drink like 4 cups of coffee a day, sometimes more, and I wouldn't get hyper.
Yeah.
And I didn't understand. It would actually just mellow me out. But yeah, they say when you're on Adderall and you have ADHD, you see the difference if someone who doesn't have ADHD.
So let's talk about your business coaching with Brooke. I mean, obviously ADD, a lot of people have it. A lot of people struggle with it. A lot of people don't know they have it and struggle with it.
And also it's an executive dysfunction, right? So there are people out there, we all have executive functions. There's people out there who have a lapse in one of the executive functions: organization, planning, prioritization, activation, all of that. So there's still things that you can work on even if you don't have ADHD. That's why I call myself an ADHD executive function coach.
And again, you're a coach, so you're not a physician. You don't prescribe medication. You don't do anything like that.
Right.
You just work with people in their habits every day.
Absolutely.
How to basically compensate for the ADD and ADHD without.
Sure.
So talk about how your process goes with that.
Absolutely. So I do an intake just like a therapist does, and I get as much information as possible about the individual, their executive functions, where they are in life, so where their starting point is and where they want to get to. I also do like a very thorough history. So we decide together collaboratively how we want to move forward. So set goals, action plans, and from there every week we'll meet and talk about what the agenda item is for them, what's coming up, what they want to work on, and then set a plan. And we do some, bigger digging into that.
And this doesn't matter if someone's going to school, if it's just their personal life, or if they're trying to work with their business. It all is...
Yeah. So if you have ADHD, it's showing up in 2 or more places. So it's not just showing up in school. It's not just showing up at home. It's not just showing up at work. A lot of adults do find that they realize they have ADHD when they're having issues at their jobs and organizing and following directions from bosses. But yeah, so it can show up anywhere. So I figure out with the individual, and it's not set in stone, what areas they want to work on, what goals they want to set, and they're very smart, reliable goals, and we build on that.
So let me ask you this, and I'm not asking for a free counseling session right now, but let's just try to explain one section of how you would work with someone. I know one of the big issues I have and a lot of people have is, I'll put something down and I can't find where I put it, and then it's right there in front of me.
Yeah.
Or I'll, put something in a file on my computer and I'm trying to figure out the best way where I could remember it. And then I think it's in an obvious place, but I can't find it.
Right. So what I said to you before we started is that you don't have a system. So it could be very chaotic for you in your brain.
But you do try to have a system.
Correct.
And that's what I'm saying. So
it has to be an organized system that you're working on and maintaining every week. So if you just write something on a piece of paper and you forget where you put it, or you put something down and you forget, you need to have places for it. So there are some people who just write on a piece of paper like you do, or they'll put it on a pad, or they'll use a weekly planner, or they'll put it on their phone or on their computer. But it has to be the same system for you. You can make these micro changes and change it eventually, but it needs to be something that you get into a habit with.
So that's interesting. So when you're talking about that, it sounds like you're asking the person what will work best for them, and not you telling somebody.
No. And so often, like yesterday, I was doing my adult ADHD support group, and then before that, I was working with one of those clients, and he said, "You tell me what I need to do." I said, No, this isn't how it works. I can tell you what to do because I have all these tips and strategies, but you need to figure out which one works for you. So as a coach, we use the client as them being the experts of their own life. So yes, of course, there's brainstorming sessions, and if they ask for consultation, I will provide them feedback, but it's them empowering themselves.
And I like this better than I dread going to my doctor every time because I know what's going to happen. We go there, and she's wonderful.
Sure.
I mean, they are wonderful, but we go there, and she asks me questions. How's it working?
Right.
Do we need to increase your medication?
Right.
That one really gets me. I'm like, how am I supposed to know if I need to increase it? Because I don't know what I'm going to feel like.
Right.
And I hate increasing medication,
Right.
so I always usually say I'm fine.
Yeah.
But and it's you see them once a month or once every few months, and
5 minutes.
the money that I'm going to have to really spend for it.
Yeah, I mean, it does get costly, but if you think about it this way, if you need medication and you're on it and you're spending, you were saying $60 a month on your medication, then think about how much more productive you can be,
Right.
and how it's improving your life and your happiness and your productivity. So in the end, and people ask this about coaching, it is a fee. But in the end, you become a more productive and happy human, so you can't put a price tag on that.
Yeah,
Right?
you're
That's a good
investing
point.
in time management. You're investing in
yourself.
ease of use of daily life.
Yeah.
Well,
And-
I can understand what you're saying because, again, if everything's more organized, you're going to get more things done. You're going to make more money. You're going to do a lot, be happier
And
person.
there's so much more self-recognition that goes into it. So once you're done working with me, then you have these tools for life. So you go back into your invisible toolbox and you say, okay, what worked for me here? I know that I had success with it. Let me reuse this.
And again, with the ADD and ADHD, I know it leads into other complications too,
Absolutely.
like depression and the mental health
Could be
issues.
comorbid.
How long is typically a session with you, and how long do you normally work with somebody in general?
Sure. So it could be anywhere from a half an hour to an hour. And we do it once a week. And in between then, they have unlimited check-ins with me. So for accountability purposes, we'll remain in touch. If they want to do some drop-off calls because they're having a tough time, we can do that. And that's all part of the price. I have a 3-month package and I have a month package. But I usually feel that my clients stay with me for around 3 months.
And usually find a pretty high success rate with you working
Right,
with
and
them.
there's no guarantee, of course, but yes, I do. And what the people who do another 3 months with me after that, it's usually because they've achieved their goals and they want to go to
Expand
the
on
next
it.
level. It's like peeling those onion layers back and seeing their progress, so they just want to keep going. And I mean, with that being said, like, everyone can use a coach, right?
Well, before I forget, I want you to tell us how people get in touch with you, your website, phone number,
Sure.
where you're located. Do you go to people or do they come to you?
Sure. So most of my business is online, and I wanted to give a promo for this for the first 30 people who email me, and I'll give my email address out. They can have a 15-minute analysis with me, and I'll give them my ebook, which isn't out yet, and a life wheel assessment. So my email is Brooke, BROOKE, at coaching, COACHING, with Brooke, BROOKE.com, or you can fill out a form on my website, which is www.coachingwithbrooke.com.
Okay. And I want you to give a little background. I do see here that you have a master's degree from NYU in students with disabilities.
Sure.
And, so you're just not someone that just walked off the street and say, hey, I'm going to work with some people in,
No.
ADD or ADHD.
2 minutes, final thoughts.
So
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out.
just real quick,
Sure.
because we have to wrap things up soon.
Sure. So, yeah, I always knew that I wanted to help people. And I had a special connection with students with disabilities. So I got my master's from NYU in 2006. I was a special education teacher for around 8 years, and then I was a school administrator for 4 years. So I did assistant directing of special education for the middle school level on Long Island. And then I decided I wanted to go more hands-on. So now I started my own company. But I do, going back to your question, work with the majority of my clients online. But if they're in South Florida, I'll do the intake session in person if they would like. And I do see some people at their houses as well. But I work with people worldwide. I have a man in Croatia right now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I have a girl in New Mexico, someone in California, Denver, Pennsylvania, so all over.
Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
ADD is something that is overlooked,
Yeah.
and people don't realize how it does interfere with your life. So
Absolutely.
it is really important. What the work you're doing is incredible.
Yeah. And I just want to say,
Sure.
I'm sorry, that, people don't realize how it affects relationships and all those other things. And now that they know that what I do, they come to me and say, oh, I think my girlfriend has it, or this and that. And is this her being lazy, or is this her not paying attention to me? No, it's a real thing that you need to work on. So.
Well, again, I really appreciate you coming in, Brooke. So, again, Brooke Schnittman from Coaching with Brooke. Did I get it right again?
You did.
Okay, great.
Good job.
And again, I want to thank Jen Hoskins-Tomko for coming in again from Clarity Health Solutions to be our co-host. Again, if you're in crisis, don't forget to call the 1-800-273-TALK number, or locally call 211. Have a great day and have an incredible week.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And that's A Real Convo, bringing hope and awareness to those affected by suicide and mental health. Tune in next Saturday at noon to The Real Convo. Business Services for You, LLC is a full-service accounting and financial services firm. Their goal is to provide value to each of their clients by identifying their individual needs and goals. Each client, whether an individual or a business, is given the close personal attention they deserve. They hold their services out as fiduciaries, always acting in their client's best interest. Their staff has over 120 years of combined experience in accounting, bookkeeping, payroll, tax, and financial consulting services. Let them show you what they can do for you by contacting them for a free consultation at 561-376-2564 or info@bizsvc4u.com.
Hey, sorry I'm late. I just left psychotherapy.
Oh, wow. You are in psychotherapy? But you seem so put together.
Ha, thanks. But that takes work. So I go to Clarity Health Solutions in Jupiter. Just walking through the door feels like a retreat. When I'm feeling nervous, angry, sad, or overwhelmed, I can always see my psychotherapist for unbiased feedback, healthy support, and skill building.
Clarity Health Solutions in Jupiter has a great atmosphere, caring staff, and seasoned clinicians, and even a psychiatrist. They believe that therapy is an investment for the future, and they cherish being a part of your journey. So, grow with Clarity. You can call them at 561-781-3333 or book an appointment at clarityhealthfl.com.